What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Juice. My name is Sayre Bedinger. Super excited to be here with you today. As always, here with me, the one, the only, Epic Keckler, Brandon Keckler. Brandon, it's an exciting time to be a Denver Broncos fan.
It is an exciting time to be a Broncos fan. It's a wild time, like always, but it's a wild, exciting time with plenty of good things to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's really never a dull moment in Broncos country, you know? I mean, it just feels like year round. It doesn't matter what month it is. It doesn't matter, what season of the year it is. It always feels like something is going on. There's always some reason for the
Something
Broncos to be in the
storybook.
news.
There's
Yeah,
always something storybook.
always something storybook, which is cool because I mean, I don't know. I guess
People,
I'm talking
people like
from
us need something to talk about. People on the radio need something to talk about, and I imagine broadcasts right now and in the months past could be pretty boring, maybe for some teams. But
yeah.
it's been anything but boring on this side of the equation.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I can only speak from the outsider's perspective, but I feel like the Broncos are probably the most entertaining team in the NFL.
Yep.
As far just from a pure drama standpoint of what's gonna happen next, what player are they gonna bring in next? Who's gonna I mean, no, I'm not trying to be super, I don't know, like pessimistic, but who's gonna screw up next,
Yeah.
or who's gonna get fired, or whose job is on the hot seat? I mean, there's always just something going on, but
Yeah,
here we
it's
are.
interesting. It's interesting. We're not a very tightly wound ship right now. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that that's always the source of the drama. But right
Yeah.
now, especially, second year coach, we're just kind of getting our franchise guy installed. There's a lot of shifting, moving pieces. So I think it's very loose. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of going on, revolving around some of this, where I think some other teams that are just like this, tightly woven, nuts and bolts are down, moving forward. You're not getting a lot of drama. That stuff doesn't really seep its way out. So I think that's part of it. Is that I don't know exactly how to articulate that. I guess just loose.
Yeah.
We're not a fully well-oiled functioning machine at the moment, and we're moving in that direction. But in the meantime, there's some messiness.
Speaking of moving in the direction of a well-oiled machine, the Juice is moving that way. We're really heading towards, we've got some clarity as far as our vision for what we're doing. We want to try some new things. We're not stuck in the mode of, hey, this is what we're gonna do. You and I both are kind of that way, just in our personal lives. We're not trying to make something mundane. We wanna mix it up. We want to do stuff. We want to do stuff differently. And so I think this is going to be an exciting thing that we're doing. We're just trying to add some kind of shorter midweek episodes to really, if something comes up, we want to be able to talk about it, not a week later, or not have to react a week later, but to be able to react to stuff in the moment.
And for you and I, we want to commit to quality. So we don't always jump into a podcast unless we know like we can really commit to it.
Right.
So we're shifting our focus to like, even if we can't fully do that, like right now, Sarah's got something to get to in about 25 minutes. So we're hitting a short episode to get you guys what you need to know, where we're not going to let today go by just because we don't have a full 2-hour episode that we could pull out. So we're going to be trying to mix that up. And as we've said here on the Juice, the off season is our practice. And now we're here in preseason. So we're hoping to get our stuff together in the next couple of weeks. So we're trying to figure out the game plan, trying to figure out the system. And it's looking like the best thing is that we're going to be doing like big episodes right after the games. And then we're going to be doing short midweek episodes kind of as things arise. We're not really going to get too locked into like, oh, it's going to happen on Wednesday. That's probably what we'll target because it's a good balance for Sunday, kind of helps you get through the week. But sometimes something's going to happen that's just going to be nuts, and we're going to hop on and give you a little micro episode.
Yeah, I like that structure. I like it a lot, especially because right now there's a lot of stuff going on with the Denver Broncos. I mean, it feels like the stuff that's happening with backup players is really overshadowing the consistency with which the first team is playing, which is it's a really underrated thing that's happening right now because nobody seems to be overly worried about the Broncos starting offense or defense other than a few, hiccups here and there. Like I would say the number 3 cornerback is a little worrying to me at this point.
That made me just think of is that maybe that's part of it, is that we don't have our starters to complain about. And maybe like we kind of got calibrated to being like a critical culture the past few years.
Yeah.
Just being a critical, I think, team culture in general, just as a team that has a higher expectation than I'd say about 90% of the teams in the league.
Oh,
so that's, you know, like maybe that's it. Maybe the starters are doing really good, so people need something to complain about.
Yeah, we want those backups to be able to come in and win the Super Bowl at a moment's notice. Look what the Eagles just did. You know,
right?
They had to use their backup.
Speaking of that, though,
yes,
I'll tell you what, man. I was just watching a little Chad Kelly thing from a few days ago, and his post game response was so impressive to me, and I'm already so impressed by this guy.
Yeah,
he's just sitting there, and they're like, you know, okay, so what did you do right, blah blah, and he's like, I need to do a lot of things better.
Yeah,
I need to do, and it was like he was talking to himself and kind of answering their question, but he was like, he was not willing to accept. They were just trying to praise him. Oh, you're blowing everybody away. You've taken the second job. Could you be the backup? And they're just like, he's like, dude, I'm not going nearly as fast as I need to. I need to see the game faster. I need to be able to do this. And it was just, I was so impressed by his reaction to that. And then they're like, okay, you're very critical of yourself. Can you give yourself some praise? And pretty much all he did was just praise the guys around him.
Yeah.
And he can't, what good is it going to do for him to sit 2 weeks before the season and for him to be like, oh, I'm doing so good at these tiny little things? No, Chad's focused on all of his areas he needs to iron out and get better at. And that response from him and just the way he handled that was really cool. And then they asked him, are you ready to be the backup? And he said, look, the way I look at this is I'm going to prepare to be the starter every day. And I was like,
That's exactly what you want to hear your backup say. And I was really impressed too that he pinpointed one thing that I really appreciate about quarterbacks who get the game is they're able to go back and individually pinpoint exact plays that they remember. Like they remember these plays that they either screwed up on, like when we were exactly. And he was talking about the Tim Patrick touchdown that could have been. Where he had him just running down the right sideline and he kind of put the ball on a rope when he should have put some air under it. Yeah. And he talked about that pass and how that he's like, I should have had the touchdown to Tim Patrick. And I remember that reminded me of Baker Mayfield in the pre-draft process, because when somebody asked him about the throw that he wishes he had back from his senior season, he knew exactly the game, down, the situation, who he was throwing to, who he threw it against. He remembered every single
song
thing.
He listened to the morning he woke up. I love it.
Yeah. I like that mentality from a quarterback, because you almost have to have a photographic memory as a quarterback, because that's the only way that you can get better. Like the defense isn't going to be the exact same the next time he tries to throw that pass. And so he has to remember, okay, this is how this guy plays this route. And so it was impressive to me just to hear that. And I love what he's bringing to the table. I think he brings a fire to the table that hasn't been there since, him and Keenum both bring that fire that hasn't been there since Manning.
What a beautiful thing that we have these two. That we have these two. And I know, again, we've talked about this. It's now kind of settling. The pieces are settling now. It's not just, it's going to be cool if, Kelly passes Lynch and Bob. No, okay. Kelly's our backup. Which, by the way, maybe not. We can actually talk a little bit more about this subject, because that was one of your hotbeds. I think these are the two main key points we're going to be talking about in this short little episode. Is one, bringing in the veteran.
Yep. Yeah.
And two, Carlos Henderson. So let's finish. Let's cap this off with bringing in the veteran. So what are your thoughts on that first? Because you had some great stuff you were posting on Twitter today.
Yeah. So initially, I was actually pretty pro doing it when I initially read about it, because I'm thinking, okay, if your option is you're for sure keeping 3 quarterbacks, your option is either the veteran or Paxton Lynch. I'm thinking, okay, well, the veteran is obviously the way to go, because you've got a young player worth developing in Kelly, but you need somebody who maybe brings that stability in a veteran backup. Now my mentality is, okay, Chad Kelly's proven even in just a short amount of time, if you go back to the scrimmage where he threw a pair of touchdown passes and really stood out at their scrimmage, and then you go to the first preseason game where he obviously blew everyone away, should have got that comeback victory if not for kind of the defense, breaking down there at the end. And he did throw the interception, so we gotta give credit where it's due. But then the second preseason game, and he comes out and he's even, in my opinion, he looked even better against second team players.
Yeah.
So my thought is, you've got all these people. You got all these people talking about this. This is kind of the connection with Carlos Henderson. You got all these people talking about setting a bad precedent of bringing a player in who hasn't been there at training camp, and he's replacing, this competition at wide receiver 6 just based on draft status. Well, what's the precedent that's being set then if Chad Kelly comes in and works his tail off, wins the backup position over Paxton Lynch, a former first-round pick, after not playing football in 2 years?
And then you bring a veteran guy in.
Yeah, then you bring a veteran guy in, and you're like, all right, so Chad, you're kind of the guy that we're developing, but if anything happens the case, like, we're gonna put this guy in. Like, I'm not doing that to the guy that's proven a playmaker. He's the only quarterback on the team through 2 preseason games with a touchdown pass.
Right.
And he's got 3. He should have 5.
3.
Yeah.
3. Yeah. 3. There we go. Yeah. So I heard you say all that, or I read it, and then I sent you this earlier on Twitter, but I listened to a Chad Kelly interview after I had heard you say that, and they were asking him about, do you think you've gotten in a rhythm? And he said, the more reps I get, the more rhythm I'll have.
Yep.
And that was where it was like, I paired that up with what you had just tweeted, and I was like, dang, he's right, because you bring in that veteran quarterback, and Chad's going to have less rhythm out of his own mouth. According to what Chad Kelly just said, the more reps I get, the more rhythm I'm going to have, which is the more chances he's going to be able to step in and be the guy to lead us if Keenum goes down or in the future if we need him. So if in his mind, the equation is very simply more reps is more rhythm, then I don't see why we'd want to bring in someone else to take those reps away and take his rhythm away if we're potentially going to rely on him.
Yeah. Well, let's just look at a scenario. Let's say Case Keenum comes down with a 3 to 4 week injury, give or take. I mean, because any injury like that, any injury where you are looking at needing a relief pitcher, to use a baseball term there, any injury like that, you can't just settle it on a specific amount of weeks. Like, you can't just say, oh, he's going to be out only 4 weeks. That's it. Like, if he's out with a 3 to 4 week injury, you have to assume that it could be longer. And so if you're looking at a 3 to 4 week injury or more for a guy like Case Keenum, what's your alternative there as far as salvaging the season? You hand the reins over to, let's say it's Matt Moore, because I've heard names like Mike Glennon thrown around, and I'm thinking, my gosh, like, I
would rather have Chad Kelly play over all those guys.
All of them. 100% of them. 100% of them.
Just put one of those guys into the scenarios we just watched. I'm not even asking to live in like a fantasy world where Chad Kelly becomes this great quarterback. Just look at the drives he already did. Look at the command that he had and the will he imposed, and put a Matt Moore or a Glennon in there. And you really think he's coming away with 3 touchdowns in those scenarios? No,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Those guys to me are just journeyman backups, capable. They're probably smart enough to come in and learn an offense and operate it in a practice well enough that coaches can sleep at night thinking, okay, I've got a guy who can operate my scripted plays well enough that he's not going to completely screw up my game if my starting quarterback goes down. But what happens when you need someone to help you win games? That's what John Elway said he's looking for in a backup quarterback, is someone that can help the team win games. There's not a backup out there, and you could argue Colin Kaepernick all you want. There's not a backup out there that's going to come in and help you win games. The NFL is just bleeding. It's starving for quarterbacks. I was watching the Bengals and Cowboys preseason broadcast when I worked out today, and we've got Cooper Rush coming in as the number 2 in Dallas. Cooper Rush. You've got Jeff Driscoll as one of the primary backups in Cincinnati. Denver is lucky. Yeah. The Broncos are lucky to have Chad Kelly. He's a playmaker. And I'm not We can say all we want about, oh, he was a 7th round pick. He's Mr. Irrelevant. He's playing against backups, blah, 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 blah. I've heard all that crap before about guys who play well against backups. I'm sick of it. Mitch Trubisky came in and played well against our backups last year. And he was obviously the 2nd overall pick, but guys who are good play well against backups.
Right.
So why can't Chad Kelly just be a good freaking player instead of he's just the next 7th rounder that Denver's fan base is getting excited about? That's bullcrap.
This is a good point to rest real quick is, you know what? There's a lot of people like this out there, Broncos country and out in the world in general. And you know what? If that's how you're looking at it, you're on a different frequency than me. You know what I mean? And so in that case, it's like, all right, you got to kind of chew the fruit and spit the seeds with what they're saying. And, everyone has the right to their own opinion.
Yep.
But like, if that's the way you're looking at the situation, man, we are tuned to different frequencies and we are seeing this situation in completely different ways. Because if you're not seeing the sparkle of magic that's happening around Chad Kelly in 2 little preseason games of what exponentially where the curve's going, where the wave's headed, like, then you don't get it. And I don't have an explanation for you, but I've seen enough already to where I'm no longer scared of Case getting knocked out for the season.
Agreed.
And that's something that I don't know, like that he's our saving grace going into this. We finally have a quarterback, but I've seen enough in Chad Kelly to where obviously, if Case goes down, then you'd bring the veteran in to come in and help Chad. But I don't see how you're not going to keep him as a 3rd quarterback. No, why would you keep him as a third quarterback when that guy's not going anywhere? No. If those guys are kind of interchangeable and there's about a handful of them around the league, then wait till Case goes down and then hire him to come in and back up Chad Kelly. But I don't see a reason at all for any of those guys to come in and take a roster spot away from one of these other dudes. Chad Kelly's shown us enough that he can at least be the backup and probably the starter.
I agree completely. I agree completely with that. And I think that one of the reasons why I don't agree with some veteran backup coming in on the street is because we've got our own guy who needs this shot to kind of make it on the 53 as like okay, hey, this guy got drafted really high. We got to keep him on the roster. Yeah. And this is my big deal with Carlos Henderson. And I don't think, again, this gets back to that whole same wavelength thing. There's a lot of reasons why even though Carlos Henderson has screwed up off the field a couple of times, there is definitely some back and forth here at the very least in terms of the way that he's been kind of handled since he was drafted. I don't necessarily agree with everyone who thinks that he hasn't been around long enough to necessarily deserve a roster spot. Look at who's been. Okay, let me just ask a question here. And this is a rhetorical question because I know the answer already. Mm-hmm. Who's been on the team? Who's been on the Denver Broncos longer? Carlos Henderson or River Craycraft? Who was in training camp in 2017? Who's been on IR all year? Right. Who was at OTAs? That was Carlos Henderson. He missed one training camp. I get it. It's not a good look. It's not a good look for him. It's not a good look for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. No one's saying that,
No, absolutely not. But I don't think this has to necessarily set a precedent. I mean, why does everything have to be so black and white like that? Like, well, if you let Carlos Henderson be on the team, now you got to let everyone be on the team who skips out on training camp. That's not the case. Nobody knows what Carlos Henderson has been going through. Nobody knows why he was MIA. Yeah, that's it.
The biggest thing is, like, I could sit here and go, you know what? To be honest, Sayre, I think they should cut Carlos Henderson. Mm-hmm. However, I would have to put an asterisk by it that says my opinion is incomplete. My final conclusion is incomplete because part of one of the variables in the equation, no one even knows. So it's like I can only make an assumption on what that variable is.
Correct.
And then I can make some conclusion based off of the assumption. So it's like to me, that's where I haven't spent too much time coming up with my own personal judgments about whether he's right or wrong.
Right.
Obviously, he's made some mistakes this offseason.
He has. There's no denying that. I mean,
but that to me, it's like, okay, so I talked about this with you earlier. If next year, okay, say we retain him and then next offseason, cut Carlos Henderson and move forward. But as of right now, we still don't even know what we have in this piece that was a top 100 selection for us. And
yes.
Even though we have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver, 2 of them are old and we're phasing them out. Everybody knows that. We're moving to the next generation of Denver Broncos. And a trifecta in the future of Sutton, Henderson, and Hamilton would be great. So for me personally, I don't know enough of what's going on with this Carlos Henderson situation, but that it would be terrible to lose a top 100 pick without even putting him on the field and without even seeing what you have in him. So I would much rather, which is I think right along with your main point, I would much rather have a 6th or a 7th wide receiver be Henderson and not have an extra quarterback and see what we have in that variable. If he's showing signs right now at the end that he wants to be a part of this, okay, and this is, again, we talked about this earlier too, then put him at the bottom.
Put him at the bottom.
Make him work, make him play freaking special teams, make him work his butt off to prove that he belongs in a substantial spot of this squad. But you don't cut the guy. You don't cut the guy because he made a couple mistakes this offseason, which weren't even really that big of deals in the grand scheme of things.
No.
And then for him not showing up at training camp for a reason that we're completely unaware of, it's just unfair of Denver Broncos fans to make a staunch conclusion that he should be cut because of his this and that when we just don't know. There's too much we don't know. And I'm trusting Broncos personnel in this that they know. And if they haven't cut him, and if they want to keep him, they know the situation far better than I do.
Yes. And that's the thing right there is even Vance Joseph today said that he didn't know anything new about Carlos Henderson. I don't know if I necessarily buy that, but he had a conversation with John Elway. Hopefully the air was cleared. Hopefully he was able to explain himself. This is the other thing that bothers me. Why are we not, as a collective fan base, hoping and assuming the best?
Right.
Why do we always assume the worst? Well, he was just dinking around playing Fortnite at home, just messing around while all of the rest of his teammates were at training camp working hard. We have no freaking idea. Right. We have no idea. And that could very well be the case. And if that was the case, that might be grounds to actually cut him and say, you know what, this guy doesn't love the game of football. He doesn't want to compete. He doesn't want to be on the team. But if he's back and he wants to be on the team, I mean, you got to give him that shot. You've got to give him a shot. If all of that's
confirmed to be true, these behavioral issues and what he was doing instead, and it wasn't a big deal, and if all of that proves to be true, of course, cut him. We don't want that. We don't want that on our team. But until we know that's certain, it seems like he's going through an incredibly personal issue. Yeah. And I think if that's the case, he's going through an incredible on the side of being empathetic, sensitive, and, open to whatever this human being is potentially going through. Correct. And yes, he could be an awesome athletic talent for us. And that's what we are hoping for. That's what we're watching football for. Absolutely. But until then, this dude's going through something and you just don't know his story. You don't know enough about, this dude could have a broken heart. This guy could have experienced a major loss. This guy could be going through just a bone shattering depression, soul crushing emptiness. You don't know. We don't know. All that sounds over dramatic, right? But it's like, these are common human struggles that people go through. You never know. Maybe last year was a disappointment and then they bring in 2 guys that look really good. And maybe that just deflated his whole being. And of course, we don't want that to be the case. We don't want someone that responds that way to competition.
No.
But there's just so many ways that this could be playing out that's where it's like, I'm very sensitive to the person and I want the best for him. And I'm not going to make a knee-jerk reaction to just cut the guy because I'm not getting what I want from him. Give him this year to be on our roster. He's healthy now, right?
Yep, he is
healthy. So he's fully healthy and he wants to play.
Yep. And so
why the heck would we not keep an asset like Carlos Henderson if he's healthy and he wants to play? And if we have problems with him again this year and maybe in next year's offseason and he gets arrested again, we cut the guy.
Yep.
Send him to the Browns. Do whatever, you know?
Yep. Yep. But with a pick that high, it can't just be 2 strikes, you're out, you know? You chose to put him on IR, you know? And I would love for people to go to predominantlyorange.com and read the post that I put about him out there, because I mean, I've been following this situation extremely closely because I loved Carlos Henderson coming out of the draft. And I wanted to see him be that number 3 piece for our offense last year, but it unfortunately didn't work out. And so I kind of laid out the situation on there in detail. I know we're running out of time here, but I laid out the situation in detail there. I would love for people to go read that and then truly reach out to Brandon and I with your thoughts on this situation, because if you have all the facts, if you have all the context, which even at this point we still don't, but if you have most of them, I think you'll tend to agree with what we're saying here. I really do. I really believe that if you understand the context and the situation and believe the best for the reason that he was gone, I think you'll see it in a different light. And so
listen to his bio real quick. In the middle of the jungle, trying to make it to the sunlight. Like, even this is a dude, self-admittedly in his bio, he feels like he's deep in the jungle, man.
Yep, he's deep.
Can be a scary place full of a lot of unknown, and he's trying to make it to the light. Like, let's don't just hit me and Sayre up and tell us your love. Show Carlos Henderson some love.
Yeah,
let him know you don't know what's going on, but you wish him the best and you believe in it. You know?
Exactly.
So,
and for those listening, he actually did reach out. He reached out on Twitter, and I won't say exactly what he said, but you can tell the dude's going through a lot of stuff. He's going through a lot of stuff,
and he feels very misunderstood.
He does. He very much does, and he's defending himself because so many people have been so negative. He defended himself a little bit, and I welcome that. And that's what I want. That's kind of what I want to see from him. So,
and he's not hiding in a hole. He's actually, like, you know, even with him addressing and talking to you, it's like, okay, you know, I am being spoken about incorrectly is basically the general vibe. So that to me, as well, as it makes me pump the brakes on like rushing to conclusions, because you just don't know.
Exactly. And when we find out, if we find out, we'll see what happens.
Right. And we'll hindsight, look back and see whether or not, you know, were we in alignment? Were we right in our thinking, or was everybody else that was like, cut him completely right? You know, so we'll see. Hindsight's 2020. So.
That's right.
Well, thank you everybody for attending this first live micro episode.
I can hardly believe it. That was quick. That feels even quicker than it was.
It felt very quick, but it also felt like we got some substance in. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, we will have another substantial, big, meaty 2-hour get into the depths of it on with our next game. Which I'm a terrible Broncos fan right now. When's our game?
Friday night.
Friday. Cool.
Friday night.
Nice little. Let's do a little TGIF post game late Friday night podcast.
Let's do it.
Be there, be square, everybody. Well, Sayre's got stuff to do. He's got we can hear the babies in the background.
The babies are coming. The babies are coming in hot.
Babies are coming, man. Babies are coming in hot. So thank you everybody for coming. Thanks for listening. Let us know your thoughts. Shoot us some love, shoot Carlos some love, and we will see you on the next podcast. This is Brandon Keckler here with Sayre Bedinger. And as always, God bless and go Broncos.